The good folks at Comics for Fun and Profit have been doing 2 episodes a week for quite some time now, and it's all thanks to, first of all, Jason, and second of all, our patrons who allow us to add the space on our server, broadcast more, store more, share more with you, the listeners. I'm envious of those of you who have unlimited storage and media server capabilities. We pay for ours here at the C4 FAP. It ain't cheap. We thank you so much for those of you who go to patreon.com/comicsfunprofit and contribute at any level to say thanks, to say, I want to be a part of your Slack channel conversations. I want to get exclusives. I want to get early access. I want to get ad-free access. I want to get swag. I want to get some free stuff. Whatever your reasoning is, we appreciate it at any level because it does make a difference. So from the bottom of Kyle and I and Jason's heart, thank you for contributing.
Aloha! It's Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing comic book creator Stephan Franck. He's here to promote his latest Kickstarter, Palomino. Now, Stefan, correct me if I'm wrong. It's going to be volumes 2 and 3. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, volume 1 is available on Dark Planet Comics website for $19.99. Now, the campaign will start on April 11th and will end on May 10th. Stefan, welcome to the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Oh,
yeah. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Listeners, you guys are in for a treat. Stefan has an incredible work history. He is an award-nominated amateur animator, writer, director, comic book creator. Who supervised the animation of Marvel Studios' What If and is currently directing new episodes of this series. I hope I got that information correct. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Now, he was also supervising animator on the cult classic, The Iron Giant. He also worked on the story for Despicable Me. He co-created the animated TV series Cornel and Bernie on Nicktoons Hub Network. He received an Annie Award nomination. Now, according to Wikipedia, the Annie Awards are accolades which the Los Angeles branch of the International Animated Film Association, or ASIFA Hollywood, has presented each year since 1972 to recognize excellence in animation shown in cinema and TV. Now, he was nominated for Best Director in a TV program for the featurette Smurfs, The Legends of Smurfy Hollow. He has founded a comic book publishing company, Dark Planet Comics. I'm going to ask you, for our listeners, can you just... Oh, no, actually, I'm going to ask you that question in a bit. So now, his graphic novel debut was Silver, that earned him a Russ Manning Award at the San Diego Comic-Con Eisner Award. His other graphic novels are Rosalind, as a prequel to Silver, and the first volume of Palomino. Did I miss anything?
No. This is this has been busy bunch of years. I just the Russ Manning Award. I was nominated but didn't win, so I just need to make sure.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you.
No worries at all.
Now I'm going to ask.
I wish I'd won.
Now, do you want to add anything? Do you want to spotlight anything, one of your particular works or anything for our listeners?
All this stuff. I mean, like no, I mean you hit it all. It's just that's pretty much. I mean, there's also a lot of other stuff, but I'm gonna say those are the titles or movies or the shows that people usually that made an impression on people, that had like an impact, and that people usually come to me and say, hey, this thing, whether it's the Iron Giant, whether it's Silver, whatever, What If, of course, those are Despicable Me. Again, I think those are the ones that really had more of an impact on people.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Now, Stefan, I just want to say you are living the comic book fan dream. You are an animator, you're a writer, you're a director, you're a comic book creator. You, like I said, you are living that dream. That's great.
Well, yeah, I'm incredibly lucky. It's when I started doing all that stuff when I was, I don't know, I want to say 6 years old, literally,
Yes.
and I've never stopped, and I've been able to work on some of the characters that I grew up with, I grew up loving, and now I get to kind of continue, giving them life and exploring, stories and themes through them. And it's just like, yes, I mean, it's true. You're right. It is a dream come true in a certain way.
Now, before I start getting into the interview, I want to give a big shout out to Hannah Bahedri of Superfan Promotions. Hannah, thank you very much for asking the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast to do this interview. And thank you for setting up this interview and for an advanced reading copy. Again, Hannah, thank you very much. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, she's awesome.
All right. Now, where can listeners follow you on social media?
So social media, you can either follow me, Stephan Franck, or Dark Planet, either on your Facebook, your Insta, basically Twitter, but the hub is the darkplanetcomics.com, where you get all the news and info and the books and all the stuff, is everything lives there.
I'm sorry, off the cuff question. So when did you start Dark Planet Comics?
That's a great question. I started Dark Planet I'm trying to remember if it's 2013 or 2014. Because I was doing, as I said, I grew up doing comics and animation and all that stuff, and then as a career, animation is where really took off first and became sort of like the life project. And around 2012, 2013, it occurred to me like, hey, wait a minute, I want to do the comics too, right? Let's not forget, and so when I just because when you do animation, you do it for the big studios, and it's great, and there's a lot of but also it means being very dependent of a big corporate infrastructure that you can't control, and so for the comics, I really wanted like a counterpoint to that. And so this is why I was like, let me start my own publishing outfit, which is Dark Planet Comics, and which I can creatively have complete control in terms of the release dates of the books and everything. I've created a complete control. So that started in 2013, 2014, around the time where we released the first Silver book.
And then sorry, another off the cuff question for listeners. What is Silver about?
Oh yeah, Silver is a continuation of, it's an original universe that is based on the Bram Stoker's Dracula universe. And you have this group of con men who team up with this woman who's a vampire hunter. Her real name is Rosalind Van Helsing. She's the last of the Van Helsing, and together they try to steal a precious treasure called the Silver Dragon from a castle full of vampires. What could possibly go wrong, right? So that's the first series that I did getting back into comics, and the full story is 4 trade paperbacks that were published between 2014 and 2018 by Dark Planet Comics, and then just a couple of years ago we entered like this arrangement with Abrams Comics Arts.
Oh yes,
right, who are just amazing and do create beautiful books and stuff. And so now they're taking over the publishing of Silver, so we're working with them, and they've put together this amazing hardcover. The first one, and it's honestly, as far as I'm concerned, is the ultimate edition of the work so far, and the first book came out in the fall of 2022, and the second book, so like the first book, the first hardcover has trade 1 and 2, and the
Mhm.
next one that's coming out this year as trade 3 and 4. And so you have the full story now in this beautiful hardcover edition. And those books, by the way, can be ordered / pre-ordered for the second one through the Kickstarter campaign of Palomino too.
Oh my God. Now I'm interested in picking that up too.
You know, well, since we're in the world of silver, right? So, like, what's really cool is so you have the silver story, and then there's also a prequel to it, which is just simply called Rosalind.
Yes.
And that's so Rosalind Van Helsing, was, this vampire hunter in silver, which you meet as an adult, in silver. But Rosalind is her diary as a child. And that's a very, very unique book. And it's a very interesting thing. It's a little bit different because it is the diary, so it presents itself differently. It's not a regular comic, but it is definitely super compelling and super fun.
But that's pretty cool because you're playing in your own sandbox. You're playing with your own toys, and you can either you can like you said with Rosalind, you can make it into a diary format.
Yeah.
There's no one above you to say.
That's right.
I don't know if that's
to anybody. I just make it and I take it to the people, and they like it or they don't. So it's a great counterbalance to other work that is fantastic, but that by definition involves tons of people, and
All right, sorry, I'm going to move along. During a Screen Rant YouTube podcast interview, now that was dated back, I believe, in September 3rd, 2021, you mentioned that your parents own like a comic book store. Now, may I ask, can you talk about that? Because that sounds so cool, because like you said, as 6-year-old, you were drawing, you love comics. I mean, go for it. Like,
well, yeah, well, let me tell you, one day I was like maybe in second grade or third grade. I don't know. I was very young, and my mom's picking me up from school, and she picks me up from school, and she said, "Hey, we have to stop by the grocery store," and we stop by the grocery store, and I just see this aisle of comics, and I become transfixed by it, and I'm like, can I wait here? And she's like, yeah, sure, right? In those days, those were different times, right? So
yes.
So I'm like, and I know what I picked up. I picked up this Green Lantern and this Flash, kind of comic, whatever. The French version, it was in French, right? But the point is, my mom comes back, and I go like, "Would you can I get this?" And she's like, "Oh, you like these?" And I'm like, I'm like 6 or something, right? I don't know anything that's happening around me, that. And she's like, do you like these? I'm like, yeah, I like this. And she said, yeah, we'll take it. But she said, I have a lot of those at the store. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? Right. And so it turns out that my parents did have a store that for some reason it didn't click in my head at that young age. And it was a store. So we lived on the very outskirts of Paris in this very kind of blue collar kind of, area. And there was a store that was this kind of basically this neighborhood store where they sold books, comic books, magazines, newspapers, but also school supplies. So that meant drawing supplies. My dad had a photo studio in the basement. He would process people's films and stuff. They had Super 8 film, so all that, and also cigarettes. They sold cigarettes and bus fare and stuff like that, which probably is what kept the doors open. But the point is, like, oh my God, once I realized that I was there, that became my like cave of wonders of storytelling, and I got into all of it, right? So we had the French comics, the American comics, we had the newspapers, we had there was books, there was even records, toys. When I was 10 years old, I was the one, like, when Christmas time came, me and my brother were the ones kind of designing like the toy window and stuff like that. So it was magical, and this is when I fell in love for sure with like comics, again, the French ones, the American ones, and all of it.
If you don't mind me asking, like, Can you like name a couple French, maybe some well-known French comics that
Yeah,
we may know here?
sure. Well, Tintin is obviously
Okay.
very well-known one, and I had every single. I mean, you have to understand, I had every single.
Mhm.
There was a Western comic that would be like kind of cartoony, but really well researched because the writer had lived in the in America in the West for
Mhm.
a while. It was called Lucky Luke. And
Mhm.
that's very 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 popular. Um, there's so that's when I was young, right? So
Yes.
there, so those are the most the Smurfs. Obviously, I grew up with the
Mhm.
Smurfs. And so those were like really the French one. There was Asterix also, which I
Yes.
really liked, but for whatever reason, this is not the one I connected with the most. I mean, I don't know why, I can't tell you why, but it was Lucky Luke, Tintin. As far
Mhm.
as French comics, I think those were like at an early age were my favorite ones. And then of course there was there's a lot of great comics in France, right? Like and you have all the sci-fi stuff, like Mobius,
Yes.
Mesmer, a lot of the big sci-fi movies of the
Mhm.
70s in America, where the design were really influenced by French bande dessinée sci-fi of the 70s. So all that stuff, people like Drouillet, Bilal,
Mhm.
all those amazing authors. And I had a book, I still have it right now. I mean, like you can see right there. I know we're doing the audio, but I
Mhm.
still have those books back there. There is this book that I called, uh, you know, like the flying saucer dossier. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it was a kind of like a quote unquote nonfiction
Mhm.
comic, super well drawn.
Mhm.
And it was basically like nonfiction, every
Yes.
UFO stories recorded known at the time, whatever. Dude, that book was my just captured my imagination like
Mhm.
nothing else ever.
Wow. Um.
And then I'm gonna add one more thing to you. I
Yes.
then the craziest thing, it was my favorite thing to do in the world, was when my mom would every months, 3 months, whatever, she would go to her distributor, right? Like
Oh.
for instance, if you're a comic store and you would go to Diamond, and because there was no catalogs, it's like she would literally go to the warehouse and pick stuff.
Oh my
Right.
God.
So when I would go to her with
Yes.
her to we be in this place of
Yes.
pallets, and it's a warehouse, and you open the book and it's like, "Oh, The Spirit by Will Eisner. What is
Yes.
this? Oh, the new blah blah blah. What is this?" And I just like that was there's couldn't be anything more magical to me.
God, that's amazing. Oh. Oh. That just sounds so. That sounds so awesome. And the store that your parents ran, it's perfect. It's perfect for artistic creativity.
Mhm.
The photo lab in
Yeah.
downstairs, the records, the music, the comics, the toys. Because kids can make their own stories. Whatever
Yeah.
cars or action figures, they can make their own stories. And then, like you said, they also sold school supplies too. Oh my
Yeah.
wow!
To this day, I can't go into an Office Depot without like feeling like, oh my God.
Oh my God!
Just like just love this, like this idea of this story idea I want to write. Let me go get like a notebook and a nice pen, and let me sit in this
Yes.
little cubby hole and write it. It's just like it was all so available. It was
Mhm.
incredible. Just I was so fortunate.
Wow! I said that's really cool. Now, like you said, you started when you were 6, started to draw. What was it at 6 years old, or was it later in life that you decided to work in animation and in comics?
Well, I'll tell you a story, like which must have happened when I was 6 years old. Uh, um, and I know I can't place the time because
Mhm.
my dad passed away when I was 7.
I'm
So
sorry.
I know it was before that. So and so one day he was looking for so he goes to the living room, right? And he
Yeah.
finds that the coffee table, which was a glass coffee table, was
Yeah.
missing. And he's like, where's the coffee table? And he looks around the house and he goes up the stairs to my room and he finds me. And I don't even know how I managed to do this. I brought that coffee table to my room
Yes.
and I was using it as a light box to animate Tintin's rocket taking off. And I was 6 years old, you know? And the gift of, I think, parenting, you know, that is that a lot of dads would have gone, what are you doing? This goes in the living room, right?
Yes.
But he didn't say that. He saw what I was doing. I said, wow, now you're all set up to do your work, you know?
Oh, it's
And
nice.
it's been my work ever since. Never stopped being my work, you know?
Now, may I ask, what was your first reaction when you saw your name on the screen, whether it's TV or on film? What was your first reaction when you saw that?
I'll give you the real answer. The first movie that I worked on, like I did internships and stuff like that, but the first movie that I worked on full time, just when I graduated from school, was Five All Goes West, an animated tale, an
Yes.
American Tale to Five All Goes West, right? And let me tell you, that was so hard because just, you know, there was amazing artists, you know, and stuff, and, you know, in 2D animation, you have animators, and at the time I was an assistant animator, so it means that I had to go over amazing drawings from my animator and do them justice and just, you know, and which was really, really hard. So it was like crying tears of blood every, you know, so it was a very, very hard time for me just because I was fighting so hard to be able to do a good job, you know. So there was a lot of really sort of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. And so we went to the screening and it was great. And then they all gave us the VHS of the movie a year or two later, right? You know, and so I'm holding this object in my hand, and I was like, "Oh, that's it." You know what I mean? Like just this idea of how built up that whole experience had been to me in terms of like my hopes and dreams and me trying to kind of raise to the level that I needed to be able to do a good enough job to feel like, you know, I contributed, you know, in a good way and stuff like that. And also all that effort and, you know, it was so big. And it's just at the end is that, yeah, it's just like it goes here on the shelf, right? And so, and I felt made me feel really weird, you know. And that's was like a first step in me realizing that the outcome is not the point, is the experience, is the journey. It's just like, well, it's the work that you're doing while you're doing it and how you're present for it. And hopefully you get to put some truth in it and stuff like that. But it's not like there's no medal that you can get at the end that will ever be matching the effort and the sort of like mental and emotional investments and effort that goes into any of those things and the human adventure of it. It's the adventure of it that is the point.
So I'm going to ask you, what was your first reaction when you saw your name on silver?
Yeah, that was amazing. So like, which is funny now because you're talking about now I'm holding an object in my hand, but that is meant to be an object. You know? And like when I had when the first trade came out and I had it in my hand, I was just like, that was really magical. And the beauty of books, and which is different from movies, because movies are so, you know, every dollar makes a difference. So if you spend $100 million on a movie, it's not going to look the same as if you spend $50 on a movie. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, you know, the money really is, you know, part of the equation. But books, once the books exist and you're at a convention and you're presenting it to people, a book's a book for the audience. And a book by any author from any publisher sits on anybody's shelf next to any book from any author from any publisher. And so it's almost like the reverse, right? And so no, it was very just it was huge, you know, for me. But I'll tell you the moment that I'm going to say was the most striking in silver, the journey of doing it, you know, was when we had the first cosplayers.
Oh,
because you know, as you know, I do the Marvel stuff, and so, for instance, with What If, when our very first trailer came out, like I think in 2019, like
mhm,
23 or something like that. I mean, 6 weeks later, I was at New York Comic Con, and they were already like the cosplay, players had been activated to be, like Peggy Carter and stuff like,
yes,
and it's just like, which was amazing,
mhm,
right? But at the same time, it's Marvel, so it's like, yes, there's already an audience, there's already,
yes,
but for a series that is done in complete independence,
mhm,
completely grassroots,
mhm,
and we did sell a lot of books through conventions, through all the, it was real grassroots. It was really embraced. There is a real readership to it. But when you start to see people embracing your characters and without any sort of having the benefit of a huge footprint in the world to begin with,
mhm.
it's incredible.
That is really nice. Did your mom see any of your works, either animation or
Yeah,
comics?
she saw almost all of it.
Oh, mhm.
She sadly she passed away last year.
I'm sorry.
She was 89, so she had a long,
Mhm,
beautiful life, and she was lucky enough to be all there and well and living in her life and in her,
mhm,
own apartment. And until 3 weeks, before, she was still in her studio, writing and editing poetry for people and stuff like that, and then she was gone like a Jedi.
I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna ask, do you remember what was her first reaction when she saw your works, either in animation or in comic?
It's a really good question. Here's the first memory that I have. So like when I was a kid, right? And
Yes.
the big thing was for any parents. And like, okay, so I'm gonna flip the question just a little bit. No, I'm not gonna flip it. I'm gonna find my way around to it.
Oh, yes,
Because
that's no problem.
like as I was saying, I do a lot of comic book conventions, especially before COVID. We're just getting back into them now, but
Mhm,
before COVID, we're doing like maybe 10, 15 big shows every year, So I met a lot of people in a lot of different towns, different corners of the country. And every so often, you see a family comes in, and
mhm,
there's a teenager anxiously holding a portfolio,
mhm. Yes.
and then, but even more anxious than the kid is the parents,
Yes. Mhm,
right? Because they're like, first, they want to know two things. Does my kid have what it takes to just do this as a profession?
mhm,
B, and if they do, are they going to starve or are they
mhm.
going to do
Yeah.
okay, right? So there's that anxiety, right? Uh, so for any parent, it's always like, if you're not yourself a professional artist, and you're not in that, it's of course very scary. So like for my mom to um again, just like my dad, go to like encourage it and go like, you're serious about it? This is your work? All right, we'll do it. What are the schools? Right, school. All
Mhm,
right. Well, then you have to get into the school. So she was always super supportive of seeing it as the life project. But the thing that I remember is uh, when I was 10 years old, and
yes.
I'd done this couple of pages of a comic that I'm not even gonna say what it's called because it's so ridiculously embarrassing. But it was kind of a Spider-Man knockoff,
Mhm.
and I just remember bringing it to my mom, like in the kitchen, and she was like, "Yeah, it's great. It's great. Oh, it looks good. It's good. But what does it mean? What does it really mean? What is it about? Well, it's a guy is trying to.
Yeah.
No, no, no. What is it about?
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh yeah, what does it all mean? Why are we doing that? And so that's that was her first reaction,
Yes.
which
No,
was,
yeah.
to not just like, well, can you live off of this? Can you do that? But even before that, well, what are you clearly you're trying to contribute something to the world of arts and storytelling and the
Yes. Mhm.
culture. what is it that you're trying to say, you know?
Mhm. That's great that she that's great that she was supportive and being critiquing you in a creative way to push you forward, to make you grow. That
Yeah.
that is
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that's the thing that I've because I've raised three kids by this point, you know, and they've
Mhm,
all turned out great, you know. Not that I'm taking the credit for it, but it's just like, but I've picked up a few things along the way, and I think one of them is like believe your kids.
mhm,
Believe your kids when they're telling you something,
mhm,
believe them, no matter what it is. Believe them. They're telling you. If they're not, you know, they're serious. When a kid because kids don't, you know, if they come to you to tell you something,
mhm.
you know, it's they mean it, you know. So believe it, take it seriously, and you know, and help them if you can, you know.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you very much for thank you for answering those questions. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you. My pleasure.
Now I'm going to move on to Palomino. I'm going to read two quotes. One is from Zeb Wells. Everyone knows who Zeb Wells is. Palomino sits alongside Sin City, Stray Bullets, and other hard-boiled classics while singing with an original, unique, authentic voice. Lived in, brutal, mature. This, the comic book noir at its best. And I agree with it. This
Thank
other
you.
quote, I love this. And it's amazing. It's an amazing quote from this legendary creator. To be clear, it's been at least a decade since I've taken such unalloyed, that means complete, pleasure in reading a comic book. Trust me on this. Howard Chaykin, the legendary comic book creator.
It's humbling, you know. It's you know, that's you know one of the when you know, after years already doing animation, obviously, so there's a lot of, you know, experience there. But when I started doing, you know, getting back into doing comics, what, like I said, maybe 10
Yeah, about 10 years.
ish years ago,
Mm-hmm,
um I didn't know if anybody would embrace it, right?
mm-hmm,
So, like, for instance, I didn't know if the hardcore comic fans, you
mm-hmm,
know, like me, right? Like the people who want to be buried in the Green Lantern outfit kind of dudes, you know what I
mm-hmm,
mean? Like
mm-hmm.
me, you know. But if would Silver and Little Palomino speak to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which it turns out that it did, which is great. But
Yes.
also spoke to a whole new audience of comics that did not come from comics before,
Mm-hmm,
who maybe, you know, watch The Walking Dead on TV, and then they
mm-hmm.
go like, all right, I love this stuff. Where is this coming from? And then they find their way to the new graphic novels, and they found stuff like Silver or Palomino, and he speaks to them, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But the third group that was, I just had no expectations. I had no, you know, was that the people who I considered, you know, my that I'm a fan of, you know, people like Tim Sale, people like Bill Sienkiewicz,
Yes.
people like, you know, who all came out of the, you know, and just with amazing um, appreciation for it, and just their
Yes.
quotes, you know, that's there's a who's like it became like an artist's artist
Mm-hmm.
bunch of series, you know what I mean, and that to me means so much, you know.
Um, I'll get into it a little bit later. Let me just at least say this is that I love this story. The opening page with I I'm going to try to pronounce Eddie's daughter's name correctly.
Lisette.
I'm sorry,
Lisette.
Lizette. Lizette and her friend. I love
Yeah,
it because
yeah, yeah.
they're just walking on some path, and this is back in the early '80s. Again, that was a different time when kids could do things on their own without, being fear of being shot at or taken or it's
Or yeah, or maybe it was just as dangerous. We just didn't know about it. Yeah.
yeah, that's true. But I love it because they're walking, they're well, like in high school, they're already smoking, and they're just talking story. And what I love about it, the dialogue felt natural. It didn't it
Thank you.
felt real. because they're talking about what's
I
going
think
on in their lives. And it felt like
right.
even that opening page just felt like two friends, and I know them, and I believe that they've been friends for a very long time. And that's the thing
That's
that started
awesome.
to suck me into the story already.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I mean, that's what I'm trying really to do is to be natural with the dialogue. I try to there's a lived-in quality, especially Palomino.
Mm-hmm.
It's really such a lived-in book on so many levels. Yes, it's a crime story, that it's a neo-noir crime story in Los Angeles, right? So I've no knowledge of any crime. All that stuff is from imagination, right? Okay, but um, but raising daughters in LA,
Mm-hmm.
what teenagers are like,
Mm-hmm.
what the parent relationship is with teenagers when you're trying to give them their space, and but you're always
Yes.
trying to, you see stuff and you're like, all right, should I just let it ride and let them figure it out, or is
Mm-hmm.
this like code red and I need to do something,
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yes.
uh, so just this whole experience, also then there's of course the hero he's a detective by day, but he's a musician by night at the
Yes.
Palomino Club, hence the name Palomino, which used to be an actual place in music place in LA that is closed now. But so part of my life that we have not talked about is that I used to be a musician also. I've played clubs
Mm-hmm.
since I was 15 years old to maybe a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the actual musicians from the Palomino are friends of mine, and we work together in other clubs and stuff since, and stuff like so. There's even the music of it, the nightlife of it,
Yes.
the club life of it, the music world, that
Mm-hmm.
just that all that stuff. It's straight from, I'm just trying to channel that experience that is
Yes.
firsthand and just gonna pour it on the page.
Mm-hmm. Before we get a little bit more deep into that, because I'm gonna ask, sorry, I gotta ask a couple dumb questions. I know we already start to touch upon it a little bit. Um, Now the first volume of Palomino is available through the Dark Planet website. Is that correct?
That is correct. It will also be part of the campaign. So if people like when they want to support, the
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter and get volume 2 and 3, and maybe they're new to the series, they can
Mm-hmm.
also volume 1 from the Kickstarter campaign.
Okay. All right. Now this is the dumb question I'm going to ask you. We've already talked about Eddie. Um, we've already hinted that's already start. It's in the, you specifically put it in 1981.
Yeah.
Eddie Lang is a former cop. Now he's a PI.
Yeah.
He's got a daughter. So we've already talked about some of the characters, but for listeners, what is the story about?
Yeah. So it's a very interconnected story where different strands kind of
Yes.
weave together and then converge, right? Uh, so um, so on the one, so we have this duo, right? This father and daughter,
Yes.
and he's like this kind of hard-boiled character, like a former cop that had to leave the force in disgrace, and then who kind of settled into like being sort of like a small-time kind of private detective,
Yes.
by day, and then musician by night, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's a thick-skinned, hard-boiled kind of guy, very somewhere between Clint Eastwood and Steve McQueen or
Mm-hmm.
something, but he's got this daughter, and she's a teenager, and she's hilarious. And the thing is, she may be just maybe even more hard-boiled than he is,
Yes.
and so they have this bond that is unbreakable between
Mm-hmm.
them, because they're cut from the same cloth.
Mm-hmm.
But at this time, there's this dark cloud that's looming over their lives,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is that Lena, who is Lizard's mother, her
Yes.
mom, and who was Eddie's wife and the love of his life, is presumed dead.
Mm-hmm.
She went missing, but most likely dead.
Mm-hmm.
It's in an unsolved murder
Yes.
a few years ago. and obviously that's left this cloud that's looming super large over their life. And so that's one element of the story, because Lisette now is getting to the point where things happen, and that wound is reopened, and now she wants to know. She wants to know, why is he not investigating this case? And turns out there's a reason why he's not doing it. Right? I don't want to spoil anything, but she is like pushing to the point where she may do something on her own. And meanwhile, he, who again doesn't want to have anything to do with murder, with big cases like that, he wants to stay out of trouble, to stay with his daughter, keep his family together, right? But this TV actor, his wife is murdered in mysterious circumstances, and this actor is starting to get the idea that he may take the fall for it, although he has nothing to do with it, so he says, right? So he needs, and he doesn't trust the town, because he knows how the town works, right? And he's just like, maybe I'm the lower guy on the totem pole. I don't want to, and so, so he hires Eddie to investigate the case and find the real killer, so that he doesn't have to. So, but of course, somebody's wife gets murdered, again, it's too close to home, and it's like all this stuff is going, and of course, it's a neo-noir LA crime story, so everything is interconnected. Nothing is what it seems. There's ramifications that will go into like the whole power structure of the town, and and so everything starts to unravel.
And that's the thing I love about this story, is all these little strands. Eddie's just a decent guy. He's just trying to make a living, like you said. He's trying to make sure he protect his daughter, make sure she's okay. He loves her. The types of, and what I mean by a decent guy, listeners, is that Eddie, he does he's, even though he's a private investigator, it seems like he just sort of kind of does the run of the mill. Oh, can you please follow my wife? I think she, I think she's having an affair. Oh, okay. But this murder, but when he's asked by Mr. Wilcox, a famous TV star in the story, things seem to get there's a lot of seedy things going on. There's too many people involved.
That's right. It's the thing with LA, that is very typical. And although this year we had this crazy long and cold winter, but typically it's pretty much sunny 99% of the time. And so you get this kind of very sort of heavy sort of stillness to the town, where it feels like nothing's happening, but in reality everybody has a million things going on, so that's kind of like the vibe in the book.
I love it, I really do, because there's organized crime involved. Someone's coming in telling Eddie, hey, Mr. Wilcox didn't want you to investigate this, and then Eddie's, I'm going to say maybe former partner, police partner, kind of is hinting to Eddie, no, there's no case here, Eddie. Move along.
You stay off the case, the town wants you off the case. Don't go.
And then there's another, now correct, and now I'm not going to spoil this, I'm not going to say anything, but it seems like there's another group involved. They're trying to like stop him, literally completely stop him. Like I said, it's like, wow, it's like there is, but Eddie's kind of going,
and it's all connected. Everything's connected to the entertainment industry, to the political structure of the place, to and all of it is sort of rooted in like LA history,
And also too, in the first, before we even meet Eddie, we meet Mrs. Wilcox, and this is no spoiler because she's the one that's murdered in the first few pages of the volume 1. But when we meet her in like page 3 or 4, I love it how you already set up that there's already a power structure, because there's someone that approaches her at the ranch or at the horse ranch,
Yeah.
and she has this big. She goes, "You want to talk to me? You have to talk to my bodyguard.
Yeah.
You don't talk to me. And
Yeah.
already there's some. You can tell something's not right."
Yes, there is a lot going on. People have a lot going on, under the sun, under the false feeling of, it's like, the deadly water, like when the water looks very, very calm, but under there's like deadly undercurrents. So
Yes.
this is kind of the thing.
Now, what inspired you to write this story?
Well, so that's a great question. Like, to me, there's two different aspects. There's two answers to it that exist in parallel. One is, and this is true for any story that I work on, right? It is like, on the one hand, you have the high concept of, why is it exciting, right? And so, like, for me, I always knew. I mean, everything I do end up having this noir feel for some reason. It's different types of noir. It was kind of pulp noir, adventure pulp noir. With Silver is, it's neo noir LA story. For this one, but so yeah, there's the noir aspect, which was like, I always wanted to do like an LA noir type story. But also, again, from my background music and the Palomino and all that stuff, that's a world that I know so well. And I just remember, like, being a kid in France, like, and seeing having some records that had pictures of the band from the Palomino, and I was like, oh my God, that's such an interesting subculture. This is so cool. That and so having the two together, and also the Palomino again was one of those places where, like, it was such a crossroads of a time when the cowboy was everything. You're talking about from 1981, right? So that's when Ronald Reagan, literally, a movie cowboy, was president. That's when so the cowboy was the image that America sold itself with to the world and to itself. So culturally, it is relevant. Also, the era, right? The 80s, right? A lot of people, we've seen a lot of stories from Forrest Gump to The Watchmen as the 80s, as the place where the 50s come to die, But really, the world of today, the fork in the road, like wherever we are today, it's all rooted in how the world changed in the 80s on every level. So so all that stuff, right? So you had like a very, and the thing I was going to say, like, I don't think it's already in the copy that we sent to you, but there will be in the actual edition, there will be an interview, because you see how in the first book I interviewed some of my friends who were like historical musicians at the time. So I also have Janet Thomas, who will be in the second book. She's the daughter of the guy who founded the Palomino and ran it, all the way through that time. And she grew up there, and she, right. And so all those stories of all these world intermingling, it's real. And she was telling me this story that her grandfather had this Model T that was always parked in front of the club, and there were bullet holes in it. They were left there by the cops who were chasing him during the Prohibition era. So when you're talking about a place that is so culturally branded and significant for the era, that is this crossroad of all those, so you have all that stuff, you have the crime, you have, and of course that's a concept I've had for a long time. So that's one thing. But to me, you can have a concept like that, and it still doesn't move the needle until you kind of have your way into it. Like, what's it, again? I'm going back to what my mom told me when I was 10 years old, right? Which is like, but what does it mean? What are the people about in this story, right? And so sometimes I have those ideas that are in my head for years, and then they're still like just concepts are floating around. And then one day, be walking down the street. It could be very often it's when I'm in a foreign place, because then it kind of re-scrambles the world around you, and I suddenly I'm seeing this scene between Eddie and Lizette, just out of whole, and I'm like, oh my God, he's got a daughter. He has a daughter. That relationship, that's it. And I wrote that scene in like two couple of hours.
Yes.
And that scene ended up not being in the book, by the way. But it didn't matter. I had the characters, I had their relationship, I had my way in. And so once I had that thing, I just forge ahead,
Because it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it, like you said, for Eddie and his daughter, you just had that vision in your head. And like you said, even though it's not in the story, you already, you had their lives, what their lives are already.
Yeah. Suddenly they existed as people.
Yes.
Suddenly they presented themselves as people, and all I had to do is just like, oh, here you go, on your way,
And there's one scene in the book, I love it, when he was making eggs for his daughter. And he says, okay, you sure you're going to go to school now? You're not going to skip out? Yeah, Dad. Yeah, whatever. And I know there was there's some stuff going on, but the one the one full page that I love is she's kind of like, okay, I'm off to school, and she's kind of like running down the street, and he's on his porch. You see the back of him. He's on his porch holding a coffee, and for some reason that conveyed he loved his daughter. It just showed that he wanted to. Of course, I don't know why or how.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy you picked up on that page and on that moment, because I think that's a moment that any parent knows. The moment that their kids are old enough to just go somewhere on their own, you watch them leave, and you get this thing like, all right, here you go. It's you and the world now until tonight. There you go. It's that emotion, and that's what I mean. It's like until you have your way into the story on that deeper level. This is, nothing clicks until then,
Right. No, thank you very much. You talked about the Palomino. It's a key setting in the story. Now, I'm going to ask, because the music that they played at the Palomino, is it like a country music? Kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So like the thing that people don't necessarily remember these days is that Los Angeles used to be a country music town until the 80s.
Yes.
That's because there was a lot of culture, but it was not the same country music as the country music in Nashville.
Okay.
First, it was a lot more rooted in club life, because that's what, whereas in Nashville it was more like a hub for touring, recording and touring. Right? But so you had different traditions, like, you had the Dust Bowl in the 20s and 30s, right? And so all the Okies and people from the Appalachians, just came west and came to the Central Valley to work in the fields, the California Central Valley. It's the grapes of wrath, right? It's just the whole thing, right? And so they brought their music with them.
Yes.
Okay. And so after World War II, when the Cold War started, all the children of the Okies, I call them, just came down to the San Fernando Valley here, or to the LA Basin and stuff like that, to work in the aerospace industries of the Cold War, where all the planes, all the missiles, all that stuff was built here in LA. And that's, so you had this kind of union, so that good union jobs, upper sort of well-paid middle class, jobs, and they still like their music, and then they had money in their pocket, and they would, and the clubs were thriving. You know, the Palomino was just one of them, but you know, you had like 600 people on a Tuesday, you know what I mean, every day, every week, you know, and it was not just one club, it was a few of them, right? And then that culture died when the Cold War started to taper off, and you know, and so on. But and those jobs can, so it's all a whole other thing. But just to stay on your question, so you have you have that culture. And then you also have the hippies, right? Like the cosmic cowboys of the 60s. Your, you know, your Graham Parsons and so on and so forth, right? And then you had who were like very connected to folk music, but also they were just trying to do country. Like in the interview in the first book, my friend JD Menez, who's a steel guitar player, you know, played with everybody, as you can see in the interview, from, you know, I mean, giant rock stars to clubs here, right? It's just everywhere, you know. And so, but he's the one who played, him and Lloyd Green played the pedal steel guitar on the Graham Parsons historical albums, right? And he was saying Graham was not trying to be different, or, you know, he was just trying to do country music. Except he was a hippie from California, so it came out different. You know what I mean? And so so you have the Okies and their music with the Bakersfield sound and all that stuff. So that's present. And then you have the hippies and the cosmic cowboys who are around and who are bringing this whole other thing to it, you know. And then you have you know, the Hollywood cowboys.
Yes.
It is all that whole culture, you know, and so and you know, and then you, of course, you're in LA, so you have a lot of, you know, you have the blues, you have a very strong Latino presence, you know, in music too. You have, you know, so it is country music, but not the Nashville country music. It's the left coast country music, if you will, and it's completely unique.
Couple more questions about the music and the story. What kind of, because I've seen the instrument Eddie plays, but what is it called?
It's called a pedal steel guitar.
Is it on like a stand or something? And there's like, can you describe it for listeners?
So yeah, so here's the history of it, right? So it all came from Hawaii, actually, right? Because you have the Hawaiian guitar, like the steel Hawaiian guitar, right? And so in the 1930s, there was this moment when Hawaiian music and steel guitar music from Hawaii became super popular in the US. Because country music was the pop music of the time that was, you know, very, very present. It said, oh, that's a popular sound, we'll use it. And this is why very quickly the steel guitar sound of, you know, that slidey kind of sound, right, became like a signature sound of early country music. I mean, you hear it from, you know, in Hank Williams, you know, and all that stuff. But then in the 1960s, they were like, yeah, it's great, but, you know, just the fact that we're just sliding the bar across the thing, you can slide the bar a little bit and hit some, you know, minor chords or whatever, but it's a little too limited, right? So that's why when you look at how those old steel guitars were, by the way, Fender, before they did electric guitars, were doing steel guitars like that, right? So they had double necks, triple necks, because each neck had a different tuning, right? So you could play different type of things. But then that became, well, instead of having three necks with three different tunings, why don't we have only one neck, but invent a system that can bend the notes? So in the 60s, 50s, actually, 50s and 60s, they started to add pedals, so to those things. So then you had to sit, because, you know, you're sitting at it, right? So the pedals were pulling on the strings, so they would raise the tone of the string. So you would go from like an E to an F sharp or something like that, right? And then they were like, yeah, it's pretty good. But what can we do to lower? So then they added levers that you activate with your knees. So now for you need to be sitting because, you know, and those lower the tone of the string. So now your E would go down to a D, for instance, right? And so that sound became the signature sound. When you think country music, that slightly with the bendy notes and that kind of swells and all that stuff, that's a sound that everybody knows.
Yes.
And most people have no idea how it's done. And it's done on this instrument called the pedal steel guitar.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's so cool that you have all this knowledge, because the Palomino story is not just it's not just a crime noir story, but it's you know, the Palomino is a club that's an actual place where, you know, music was performed.
You know, I'll tell you, you know, like as you said, like the lived in kind of authentic aspect of it is super, I think, is what elevates the book, as you said, beyond. It's just a crime we're trying. It's not just the crime of the week. There's also, you know, like a depth to it that comes from that authenticity. Like, for instance, when I started the book, like the first book was just 4 or 5 years when I started it in like 2019, something like that. Yeah, 2019. So that's 4 years ago. I started in earnest on the first book. My youngest daughter was away at school, in school, right? And I sent her a couple of pages and she was like, wow, this book makes me homesick, you know? And I was like, yeah, man, you know, LA, it's our home, but it lives in the book, right? So the music, and same with the thing, right? Like for me, whenever I had a musician friend who lived through those years at the PAL, who just tells me, hey, man, it was exactly like that, or like, oh, this, or this, you know, and I'm like, yeah, that's I couldn't be. I feel like it's mission accomplished, you know.
I just want to ask you one more question about how important music is into the story before I start getting a little bit more into like what's volume 2 about and so forth.
Oh yeah.
Because, and clarify for me, because when Eddie's at the Palomino, he's playing on stage with his band, you know, because he's part of a band.
Yeah, he's part of the house band.
And when the singer, whoever is singing, you have the words on the page. Was that and because if I remember correctly, I think because I read a little bit about the back matter that when you had the singer sing the words are on the page. He didn't want anything else.
Right. Because I was trying to, because you know, sometimes you look at how is music portrayed in books, right, in comic books, right? And very often it's portrayed with symbols.
Yes.
Like they will put like musical notes or you know, yeah. And the problem with that is that it's a symbol. You understand, but you're not feeling it, right? And so, and especially since like very few people read music. So even if you were to put the actual, you know, it's just like, it doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's beyond just a symbol that oh, I get it. There's music playing. But I think symbols get in the way for me when it comes to visual storytelling in terms of the drawing really making you feel the experience. So what I was trying to do with these pages is like, I'm a very kind of method type artist. When I draw, I'm just in it, you know. I can't tell you why. I'm just in it, and I'm just trying to feel it and just kind of let it come out of the pen, you know. And so I was just trying to feel that music and just draw what it feels to play it, what it feels to hear it, and just trying to put that in the drawing and just put the words, and either it comes across or it doesn't.
Off the cuff question: the songs that the words that are on those panels, is that from an actual song that you?
Yeah, like the song, the first song we hear is an actual song. They're all actual songs, but yes, you know, but there's existing songs. Then in volume 2 and 3, when we get to things that are I don't want to spoil, but that have a specific sort of fictional function in the story, then those are become songs that we wrote for the book. And like especially that song "Go Go Sherry Joe" that's in there. That's something that my friend Mark Goldberg and I wrote for the book.
Wow. Stephan, I'm going to keep moving on. So I'm going to start asking you about campaign tiers. So for volume, so correct me if I'm wrong, the Kickstarter is going to be focusing on volumes 2 and 3. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So do you have, can you talk about some of the campaign tiers that would
Yeah. So I mean, I try to keep it pretty simple, right? So mostly it's about book 2 and 3 to begin with, right? But also because people keep discovering the series and stuff, we also offer in tiers that, with volume 1 and stuff like that. And of course, like if you get volume 1, 2, and 3, and or either whatever, right, from I'm totally fine with people just discovering it now and just getting volume 1 from the campaign, whatever. Just want to get people into it, right? So if you're ordering books from the campaign, I will sign every single one of them, which I do with every, which is of course not the case if you just order it later from the web or from the store or whatever. So I have those 3 books in there. But then there's also those amazing silver hardcovers, and we're rolling them into the campaign, like the first one and the second one that's coming out in just a few months, so you can pre-order it through the campaign too, and those also will come signed. And then there's also Rosalind that I was mentioning about, which is the prequel to Silver. That also, so basically we have those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books that people can get from the campaign, and then any of those books will be signed by me if people order them from the. Then there's also signed prints, because there's some really cool art that's from Palomino that some pages or some of the illustrations, some of the covers are print worthy, and they're really cool and they really sell the vibe. This is like the first campaign was the only campaign where some people just wanted the prints, not the books, but I'm gonna say those people were mostly musicians, because they wanted the poster of the Palomino, but yeah, we have some really, really cool art. And and so it's a combination of all those things, just try to keep it simple about what it is, and no gimmicks, no great books come to you signed, and you get to make them exist into the world. That's.
I'm just asking, are you going to have maybe a variant cover or 2 for volumes 2 and 3?
I not this time around. Not this time around. It's just I don't have the bandwidth for it, and I like to do new covers for new editions, so that it's either there's new material in it, or the way it's presented is slightly different or whatever, right? So, but I don't have the bandwidth to do variant covers.
Okay. Now let's say someone has read volume 1, they picked it up last year, and let's just say that they hear about this interview 2 months from now. The Kickstarter campaign is over. Is there any other way that they could get copies of volumes 1 and 2?
Absolutely. All the book, once the campaign is over, all the books will be orderable from the website.
Oh, okay.
So people can go to, once the campaign's over and the books are printed and stuff like that, you can go to the darkplanetcomics.com and order the books. The only difference is those that are shipped from the web store. Those books are not signed. So they look great, but they're not signed. But if you want the signed edition, it's from the dark. So the
Okay. All right.
And also, I cannot say this enough. I think the spirit of this is very much, and this is what I like about Kickstarter, is like it's a readership and it's a fandom that is 0% toxic. It's all about no, we believe in this. We like this story. It speaks to us. We want to help make it exist, and we're like a stakeholder into building the culture and not tearing it down. So that's, to me, is why I like the Kickstarter stuff so much.
Yes. Now, do you want to give shout outs to members of your creative team?
Yeah, I mean, there's somebody who's been working with me ever since the second silver volume, so that's almost 10 years ago. This, well, not, yeah, 2015. I was, that's going on 10 years. It's a long working relationship, and it's wonderful. It's Jeff Marsick, who edits the books and does a wonderful job at catching anything and everything and making sure that the books come out as wonderful as they can possibly be. So he's a great collaborator, and of course, one of the my wife Christina,
Yes.
who did this, because honestly, with the schedule that I had, I could not have done it otherwise. But she did all the flat coloring for book 2 and 3, which is the part that takes a huge amount of work and a huge amount of time. And she did an amazing job doing all that stuff. And without her help, she was it got busy for a few months for both of us. But so yeah, she's an amazing collaborator also, and has been, I mean, been married for a long time, and in every possible way, a wonderful partner. But definitely in this whole comic book adventure, she has been an incredible partner.
Because I'm going to say, I forgot when we were emailing back and forth, I forgot to mention, I love the colors.
Oh, thank you.
There is, again, and I'm going to say, I can't remember if it's in volume 1 or in volume 2. Eddie has his pickup truck. He's driving like on the freeway, but it's sunset, and I love the different colors of orange to show the sunset.
I've come to. It's funny because color is probably the stuff, the aspect of like the art gigs that I picked up the latest in life. But I picked it up by osmosis because, with so many years working in animation, I work daily with some just incredible art directors. Like most of anything I ever learned in art, going all the way back from, Fireball Goes West, whatever, is just standing over the shoulder of people and watching them work, and sometimes, it's because you're their assistant, and sometimes you're their director, but it doesn't matter. You're just watching people do their magic. And color is something that over the years I was not doing, but over the years, just working with art directors in animation, I picked up some of it, and it became, and once, and Silver is a black and white book because it's a pulp noir kind of 30s, kind of, it puts you in that space immediately in black and white, but for Palomino, it had to be color. You cannot do LA without color. And it became almost my favorite part of the process.
I have to mention off the cuff, in the first 2 pages of volume 1, where the 2 girls are walking, they're smoking, and then all of a sudden you see Mrs. Wilcox riding on a horse. But the thing I love about it, that she's got this flashy cowboy suit on.
And she pulls it off.
Yes, she does, and I'm gonna say, and like I say, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it just brought me back to, or even Eddie's costume. It kind of sort of brought me back to the movie, the Clint Eastwood movie, Bronco Billy.
Oh yeah.
He was still trying to keep the cowboy tradition alive, but yet all their costumes were
crazy. Clint Eastwood was at the Palomino a lot, right? Like all those movies, Every Which Way But Loose, that takes place around the Palomino. like that bar where he's hanging out, or Bronco Billy with the bar where the place he's singing, with
Yes.
Sandra Bullock. That's the Palomino,
Holy
the real one.
cow. Wow.
Yeah, some of the musicians that I've interviewed, like my friend like JD and those guys, you can see them in some of those movies playing on stage at the Palomino.
Oh my God, I have to try. I have to rewatch. It's been years since I've seen Bronco Billy.
Yeah, or Hooper,
I'm sorry, what was that? The
the
other movie?
movie Hooper with Burt Reynolds.
Oh my God, the stuntman.
Yeah, the Palomino was a big stuntman hangout. Evil Knievel was there every week, sitting in the front row, and so on and so forth. It's an incredible.
Um, sorry, Stefan. I'm gonna keep moving on. Sorry. Um, um, you made a now you made a couple dedications to important people your in your life. I'm going to ask, would you like to mention their names and how
Yeah,
important?
I mean, like the two people who passed away while I was making last year. One is my mom that I already mentioned.
Yes.
Obviously she was a huge influence in my life, and she was an incredible person. She is to a degree the inspiration for Rosalind,
Oh,
the
okay.
graphic novel. That's a crazy story right there.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other person is Tim Sale, uh, who I've became close friends with when I started, doing comics, and that people may not know that. I mean, like, I don't know how they would know this, so Palomino was one of several books that, like I said, I didn't quite have my way into that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I knew the overall concept. I knew it was going to be
Mm-hmm.
neo-noir, blah, 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 but I didn't have like the whole daughter father thing. And so I have a lot of projects like that
Mm-hmm.
I focus on at any given time, and give them a go. But that was one of those that I knew I wanted to do. I just didn't know what the way in was. So I sort of put it aside,
Mm-hmm.
and one day Tim and I were hanging out at the Phoenix Comic Con,
Yes.
and um, and we were just talking about like how we really wanted to work together, on
Mm-hmm.
a series, on a project. And he said, "Do you have a noir story that I can draw?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I have this neo noir idea. It's called Palomino Tinel." And he was like, "Man, let's do it."
Oh.
So we kind of all went home
Mm-hmm.
so over the course of the year, we kept talking, but I just couldn't. And he was waiting for me to write it,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
get started. I couldn't quite. It took me almost a year to find until I had this
Mm-hmm.
insight, and I certainly knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time that happened, it just became clear that he was not going to be able to do it.
Yes.
Uh, and so, and at that point, as I'm very like, I always write stuff supposedly for other people, and then I fall in love with it. I go like, no, I have to draw it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
at that point, he was like, dude, this has become so personal to you. You
Mm-hmm.
need to draw this. I'm like, yes, I think I need to draw this, but
Mm-hmm.
he couldn't do it. And so we did, and we ended up not collaborating on the book at all. But he was the impetus that made me get the
Yes.
Palomino concept out of storage and
Mm-hmm.
go, all right, I'm going to put this front and center. I'm going to try to give this a real go, right?
Yes.
And that's the story. So, and as people may or may not know, he passed away last year. And it was,
Yeah.
and that was, it could not have been a first, it's really funny. Like, it's, I have books in my bookshelf right there behind me that I've had for 40 years,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and I have books that I've had for 10 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And once in a while I pull something out of storage that I've not seen in 5 years, in 10 years, in 40 years. And then you open it and you go like, oh, it's funny. I remember it being perfect, and I'm seeing a lot of things. Yeah, it's still cool, but I'm seeing stuff I didn't see before. You know what I mean? But there's very few works that it's like the speed of light never slows down. Like no matter, you can open it 10 years ago, you can open it 5 years ago, you can open it 40 years, it's still as perfect and as much of a masterpiece as it ever was. Like Hellboy is that, or whatever, and Tim's work was that way, the masterwork that is perfect for all times. And you will never get to a place as an artist where where you have outgrown it. Never, because it is masterful, right? Genius. So as an artist, he was one of these very, very few people that I feel I'm never gaining a higher vantage point on their work because it was already perfect, but also as a human being, it was, just golden,
Thank you for sharing that. Excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you for sharing that. What's really nice to hear, excuse me. What's really nice is to hear about how your dad encouraged you 6 years old to keep drawing, to your mom who supported you and really pushed you to grow as a, as a creator, and for Tim Sales to, again, to, like you said, push this Palomino idea out of storage, to make, and I realize now that your story, the Palomino, is your passion project. It's your love letter to the actual club itself. Because
yes.
And all I can just say, it's thank you for sharing that. Thank you for talking a little bit about your dad, your mom, and Tim. But like I said,
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
No, but it's just nice that they kept pushing you, create.
It's like, like the cliche is no man's an island,
Yes.
and it is absolutely true. It's just, excuse me, it is anything, like there's no step, like I can say that I've had a life in storytelling, every time, but no step of it ever was taken alone, whether it's with parents that encourage you, whether it's your peer at school that encourage you, or in a studio situation that encourage you, whether it's masters that you get to work with that you learn from, that it's all. And then let's not forget the thing that's changed almost entirely my relationship with storytelling was doing comic book conventions and meeting so many thousands of people who come to you, and you have a conversation with them, and they either know you for this thing or that thing and whatever, and they share with you, like what I'm sharing with you today is personal on some, there's a personal quality to it, but it's nothing compared to what the people who come to the booth at the share with me in terms of what different works of storytelling have meant or mean to their lives, and some, so there's a generosity from the readers that's there. There's generosity from the people I learned from and worked with and stuff like that is just like, and they say, always say, never meet your heroes.
Yes.
I've met and worked with a lot of my heroes in many different fields. I've worked with in music with the people that I learned to play over the records. I've worked in animation with people that I watched their movies when I was a kid, and same with comic, and none of them has ever disappointed me in terms of who they are as a human being.
Thank you for sharing that. 2 more questions, and then I'm going to wrap this up. Have you and your family been to Hawaii?
We're dying to. We haven't. I'll tell you that, like the curse, because as we know, I'm French, right? I mean, I'm American. I'm an American citizen, but I was born in France, and so all my my wife, my kids, everybody's here in LA because we've been here 30 years at this point, but the rest of the family is in France.
Mm-hmm.
So, and especially when the kids were growing up, you're kind of tied into like, well, whenever you can travel, then you go back to France. You go back to France
Yes.
because you want the kids and yourself to have this relationship with your family and stuff like. So, it's just like, oh, so like, yes, for us, we have to go to France. Oh, boo-hoo for us, right? But man, meanwhile, they're like, yeah, maybe it would be nice to go to Hawaii, and Hawaii has become this thing that we're like, we gotta do this at some point. We gotta do it now, So I can't wait to go to Hawaii. I'm really looking forward to whenever that chance.
Okay. All right. No, thank you. Last question. Any closing words to our listeners?
Any closing words? I mean, beyond that, well, thanks for listening. And very happy to meet you through this podcast. And like these books are, I think they're definitely very personal. Like I'll tell you something. When I was at I worked for all the studios, but about 20 years ago, I spent a bunch of time at Disney before Marvel and stuff. When we were like developing stories there was this thing that the execs kept saying, when they would step into the story room and we would pitch them what we were doing and whatever, and they would say, "Listen, our movies cost $1 million a minute. Is the 1 minute you just pitched me worth $1 million?" So you're trained in trying to really make everything stand out. That every page in the book is a page you remember. That if this is going to be a fight that takes place in a certain setup, that it is the best version of the fight that you can, that no idea is the first thing that comes to your mind, but it's just like, it's a little, you worked on it just a little bit hard, just to figure out, okay, that's cool. How do I crank that up to 11, right? So, like the what they say in about movies, and I think it's true for every story, but they say specifically movies are the combination of two traditions, the circus and the theater, and so what I try to do with these books is the circus is correct as well. Like you will be amused, you will be entertained for sure. At the same time that the theater is there too. And like I was saying, that there is a way into the human experience that means something to me, and hopefully it'll mean something to you, and hopefully we'll connect. And we're all different people. You're in Hawaii, I'm in LA, somebody's in Kansas. We're all different people, but we're all human.
Yes.
The point of all this is to connect through like this true human experience that is the same for everybody. And then whenever we tell a story, we all get to connect that way. That's the idea.
Stephan, thank you very much. I wish you all the success with Palomino. Mahalo for your time. Thank you. And mahalo. Thank you in Hawaii. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to interview. Thank you very much.
It's a real pleasure. It was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. I also want to thank Hannah of Superfan Promotions. Again, Hannah, thank you very much for setting up this interview and for the advanced reading copy. Now, if you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader, and if you love like Sin City or crime noir stories, please check out the Palomino Kickstarter campaign. It starts on April 11th and ends on May 10th. I love this story. Even though there's Eddie is the private investigator trying to solve this murder, these webs of the mob, the questionable police for the town, and also another factor in the group, is coming into play with his case. The main thing is that the relationship between Eddie and his daughter, that feels real to me. I see that connection, that he loves his daughter. And as you've heard me mention, that the dialogue feels real, it feels natural. And also too, like I said, please check out this Palomino Kickstarter campaign. It's Stephen's passion project. It is. And I love it because he brings the authenticity and the history of the Palomino Club. I want to thank Drew, the co-host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys. Aloha.
In a world ravaged by war and chaos, a group of survivors must band together to brave the dangers of a post-apocalyptic landscape. The year is 2000, and the world has been plunged into darkness. The nuclear fires have burned out, leaving behind a wasteland of ruins and radiation. But amidst the rubble and despair, a glimmer of hope still remains. Join Dork Day Afternoon as they face off against marauding gangs, enemy soldiers, and even the harsh elements themselves in the world of Twilight 2000. Will our heroes survive the challenges ahead? Can they keep their own humanity intact? Or will they succumb to the harsh realities of life after the end of the world? 2 past midnight. An actual play podcast by Dork Day Afternoon.